My wife's text messages exposed her double life. In today's digital age, text messages are far more than just simple exchanges of words. They are windows into private worlds, revealing secrets, hidden feelings, and lives that often remain invisible to the people closest to us. Behind the casual texts and emojis lies sometimes a hidden reality that can shatter trust and upend entire relationships. Each notification can carry a declaration of love, a silent betrayal, or a devastating truth. This is the story of how private text messages expose the painful truth behind a double life, and how technology can uncover what the heart tries to conceal. My name is Daniel, and I'm 38 years old. I work as a project manager in Chicago, a job that keeps me busy but allows enough stability for the life I built with my wife, Emily. I've always considered myself a pragmatic man, grounded in tangible reality. My work demands attention to detail and trust in the people I collaborate with. Ironically, these same skills didn't prepare me to detect the cracks silently growing in the foundation of my marriage. Emily is 35 and works remotely as a marketing specialist for a mid-sized company. She's brilliant, creative, and strategic, with a natural ability to understand what people want before they even know it themselves. I met Emily at a business conference 9 years ago when she presented an innovative social media strategy that captivated me completely. It wasn't just her intelligence, it was how her eyes sparkled when she talked about her passions, the way she made any conversation feel important. We married after 2 years of dating in an intimate ceremony surrounded by close friends and family. For the first 5 years of marriage, I genuinely believed we had built something solid. We shared values I considered fundamental: unwavering loyalty, honesty, and openness that allowed vulnerability without judgment. Or at least that's what I thought. Life had a comfortable routine: home-cooked dinners on Fridays, Sunday morning walks in Grant Park, conversations about future plans that included maybe a bigger house, perhaps children when the time was right. But as I discovered in the most painful way possible, the calm surface of a lake can hide turbulent currents in the depths. What I saw as a shared life was, in reality, only my version of it. Emily was living another completely different narrative, a parallel story that unfolded in the bright pixels of her screen, far from my trusting eyes. Emily had always been protective of her phone, which I initially attributed to the nature of her work. She dealt with confidential campaigns and sensitive client information, so it made sense that she kept everything under strong passwords. However, in the 6 months before the discovery, something changed. The protection transformed into paranoia. Natural caution evolved into defensive behavior that began to sound alarms in my consciousness, even though I was reluctant to acknowledge them. Emily began taking her phone everywhere around the house, something she hadn't done before. When she showered, the device stayed on the bathroom counter even with the door locked. When we cooked together, she kept it in her back pocket or close enough to see at any moment. At night, she slept with it under the pillow, always face down, as if trying to hide even the possibility of a notification appearing. The frequency of messages increased dramatically. During dinner, the phone vibrated constantly, a rhythmic pattern impossible to ignore. Emily began checking messages compulsively, even during important conversations. Her fingers danced on the screen with an urgency she'd never shown before. What disturbed me most was the accompanying body language. Whenever I entered unexpectedly, she reacted with a visible start, immediately turning the phone over or pressing the power button with suspicious speed. Sometimes I'd catch a secret smile on her face, that intimate smile that used to be reserved for moments between just us. Other times, I saw expressions of deep concern, as if absorbing heavy news or emotional dilemmas. When I casually asked, "Who are you talking to?" answers always came vague and defensive. "It's just work," she'd say without looking up. "A friend from college going through a difficult time," or "Nothing important, just silly group chat stuff." But there was tension in her voice that didn't match the naturalness of the words. One specific night remains etched in my memory. We were watching a movie Emily had chosen. Her phone vibrated 3 times in a row. She grabbed it, quickly read the messages, and suddenly stood up saying she needed to respond to a work emergency. She walked to the bedroom, closing the door behind her. I stayed alone on the couch, hearing the muffled murmur of her voice through the wall, soft, almost whispered, with that intimate quality we reserve for special people. When she returned 20 minutes later, her eyes were slightly red. "Is everything okay?" I asked, genuinely concerned. "Yes, just stressed about the project," she replied without looking me in the eyes. It was then that the first real seed of suspicion was planted in my chest. There were nights when I woke at 3 in the morning to see the blue bluish light from her phone illuminating her face as she typed furiously, completely absorbed. When she noticed I'd woken, she quickly locked the screen and mumbled something about insomnia and checking emails. But I knew the difference between someone dealing with work emails and someone involved in a deeply personal conversation. Weekend plans also changed. Emily began mentioning sudden commitments, meetings with clients, last-minute workshops, helping friends move. Some excuses were true, I was certain, but others had that hollow quality of hastily constructed lies. Physical intimacy between us suffered too. It didn't disappear completely, but lost its genuine spontaneity. Emily seemed present only physically while her mind wandered somewhere I couldn't reach. Afterward, she would check her phone almost immediately, as if anxious to return to an interrupted conversation. All these changes happened gradually enough that I could rationalize each one individually. It's just stressful work, I told myself. Everyone needs more personal space sometimes. I created elaborate excuses to justify the unjustifiable because the alternative, facing the possibility of betrayal, was too terrible to consider. The cruelest part of denial is how it transforms us into accomplices of our own pain. I didn't want to be the controlling husband who demands total access to their partner's phone. I believed in privacy and trust as an unquestionable foundation. So I swallowed the doubts, suffocated the intuition screaming warnings, and chose to blindly trust, until the day truth forced my eyes to open. It was an ordinary Tuesday in March when my previous life completely crumbled. The weather was mild by Chicago standards, with sun filtering through the kitchen windows creating golden patterns on the wooden floor. It was one of those mundane moments that should be forgettable but end up permanently engraved in memory due to what they reveal. We were preparing dinner together. Emily was chopping vegetables for a salad while I seasoned chicken to grill. Her phone was on the kitchen counter, occasionally vibrating with messages she temporarily ignored, something already unusual. Perhaps she was trying to seem less obsessed with the device. Then her phone rang, not a message vibration, but a complete call. The name M appeared on the screen. Emily quickly grabbed the phone with urgency that didn't match an ordinary call. I need to answer this. It's important, she said, already moving toward the back porch. She went out and closed the sliding glass door behind her. Through the glass, I could see her posture relax immediately, a smile form on her face, her free hand gesture animatedly as she spoke. There was a lightness in her I hadn't seen in months when she talked to me. It was the version of Emily I'd known years ago, alive and radiant, except now this version was being offered to someone else. Something inside me broke at that moment. It wasn't a rational decision. It was a desperate impulse born from months of accumulated anxiety. Before fully processing what I was doing, I found myself at the counter. I remembered weeks ago catching the unlock pattern when we walked together, an L shape on the grid of dots. My fingers trembled uncontrollably as I picked up her phone. My heart beat so hard it seemed deafening in the kitchen silence. I drew the L pattern on the screen. It unlocked. For an instant, I stared at the home screen. Familiar app icons, wallpaper showing a photo of us from last year's vacation in Michigan. Everything seemed normal, but I knew I was about to cross a portal of no return. I opened the messaging app. The first name on recent conversations was M, that mysterious contact who had just called her. A green that indicated the person was online, probably still on the call with Emily. The preview of the last message said, "Can't wait to see you on Saturday." I clicked on the conversation, and the phone nearly slipped from my sweaty hands. The screen filled with messages, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, scrolling infinitely back in time, documenting months of constant communication. I began to read, and each word was like a punch to the stomach. "You're the only person who really understands me," Emily had written 3 days earlier. "I miss you too. Work is so boring without you around." Em responded, "I need you. Sometimes I feel like I'm suffocating here," she had confessed 2 weeks ago. "Hang in there a little longer. Soon we'll have our time together, just the two of us." There were photos too, nothing explicitly sexual, but intimate in a way that hurt deeply. Selfies of her I'd never seen, taken at flattering angles with that smile I thought was exclusively mine. Photos of M, a man I vaguely recognized from her office, younger than me, with casual, confident looks that contrasted sharply with my corporate routine. I kept scrolling, unable to stop despite the pain each message caused. There were meeting plans. "I'll meet you at the Clark Street Cafe at 3 p.m. As always, I managed to reserve the private meeting room. "We can stay there without interruptions. Is Saturday afternoon free? We can drive to that forest place you mentioned." The messages overflowed with affection, hearts, kisses, loving emojis. There were inside jokes I didn't understand, references to shared moments from which I'd been completely excluded. One line particularly destroyed me. "He doesn't even notice how unhappy I am. You're the only one who really sees me." He was me. Emily talked about me as if I were an obstacle, an inconvenient presence in her life. To her, I had become invisible, irrelevant. While this stranger occupied her thoughts, received her vulnerability, had access to the side of her I thought I knew better than anyone. There were messages of desire too, not graphic, but unmistakably romantic. "I can't get you out of my head. When I saw you this morning, I needed all my willpower willpower not to kiss you in front of everyone. You make me feel alive in a way I forgot was possible. My whole body trembled. The kitchen seemed to spin. I felt nausea rising. This wasn't just a momentary emotional betrayal. It was a complete parallel relationship, lived in secret while I continued my ignorant routine. It was a conscious, continuous choice to lie to me every day, to sleep by my side at night while planning secret meetings during the day. I heard the sliding door opening. Emily was coming back. The call apparently finished. With fingers clumsy from panic, I locked the phone and placed it back on the counter, desperately trying to compose my expression. But it was too late. My face must have been white as paper. My eyes certainly revealed the horror of what I'd discovered. Emily entered the kitchen with a relaxed smile that died instantly when she looked at me. Daniel, what happened? Are you okay? I couldn't speak immediately. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. I pointed at her phone on the counter with a trembling hand. Emily followed my gesture, and then her eyes widened with comprehension and terror. You looked at my phone? Her voice was low, almost a shocked whisper. Who is Em? My own voice came out hoarse, unrecognizable. And don't tell me it's work. Don't tell me it's nothing. I saw everything. The silence that followed was deafening. Emily froze, her face going through a sequence of expressions. First shock, then fear, then an attempt at composure that failed miserably. Her hands began to tremble, mirroring mine. Daniel, I can explain. She began, but the sentence died in the air, without force or conviction. Explain. The word came out like an explosion. Months of repressed suspicions, weeks of self-imposed denial, and now hours of horror reading those messages. Everything converged in a wave of anger I never knew I could feel. How do you explain months of lies? How do you explain telling another man he's the only one who understands you, that I don't even notice your unhappiness? Tears began streaming down her face, but I didn't feel the usual compassion her sadness used to awaken in me. All I saw was the woman who had shared my bed while offering her heart to someone else. How long? I asked, my voice now dangerously calm. How long has this been going on? Emily couldn't look me in the eyes. 6 months, she murmured to the floor. Maybe 7. 7 months. Almost a third of our last year together had been a lie. 7 months of dinners where she'd looked at me and lied about who she was talking to. 7 months of me kissing her goodbye in the morning, not knowing she'd meet someone else hours later. Did you sleep with him? The question came out before I could stop it. There was a pause too long. No, Emily finally said, but her hesitation had already revealed a more complex truth. Not completely. There were moments. Kisses. Sometimes more than that, but not completely. The distinction seemed absurdly irrelevant. The betrayal wasn't in specific physical details. It was in every message exchanged, every secret smile, every lie told, every part of her emotional life she'd given to another man while keeping me in the dark. The hours that followed dragged with surreal quality. I couldn't sleep. Emily had locked herself in the guest room. I spent the night on the couch, staring at the ceiling, with chaotic thoughts spinning incessantly in my mind. When the sun rose the next morning, I made a decision. I couldn't leave this hanging, couldn't allow the narrative to remain incomplete. I needed to hear everything, however painful. I knocked on the guest room door around 7. Emily, we need to talk. Really talk. No evasions. She opened the door with swollen, red eyes, clearly having spent the night crying. We sat at the kitchen table, the same place where countless normal conversations had happened. Now, this familiar space would become the scene of a conversation that would completely redefine our lives. Tell me everything. I began, my voice firm despite the internal turmoil. From the beginning. And don't leave anything out because you think it'll spare me. Emily took a deep breath, her hands nervously intertwined on the table. His name is Marcus. He started working at my office about 8 months ago. He was assigned to the same project as me, so we began interacting daily. She paused, gathering courage to continue. At first, it was just professional, but he was different from other colleagues. He really listened when I talked, not just about work, but about everything. He asked questions about my life, my interests, my dreams, things I felt you had stopped asking. I felt a stab of guilt mixed with anger at this implicit accusation. So this is my fault. You betrayed me because I didn't ask enough questions. No. Emily raised her hands defensively. No, I'm not blaming you. I'm trying to explain how it started, not justify it. You asked for complete honesty. We started having lunch together. She continued, her voice lower. Just as friends, at first. We talked about projects, about life. He'd gone through a recent divorce and was reprocessing a lot about relationships. I identified with many of his frustrations. Frustrations about your marriage? About me? Emily looked at her hands. About both of us, Daniel. About how we'd settled into a routine where we stopped really seeing each other. When was the last time we had a deep conversation? About our fears, our hopes, not just domestic logistics or work. She was right. I realized with uncomfortable shock. Our recent conversations had been superficial, groceries, bills, work complaints. But that didn't justify anything. So you decided to have those deep conversations with another man instead of talking to me about it. I replied coldly. I know it sounds terrible, and it is terrible, but it was gradual, Daniel. The lunches became after-work coffees. Conversations about work became personal. Texts about projects became about our lives. And at some point, I realized I was looking forward to talking to him more than to you. Her words were knives being slowly stuck in my chest. And when exactly did this become romantic? romantic, sexual. Emily closed her eyes. About 4 months ago, we were working late on an urgent project, just the two of us in the office. I was stressed, overwhelmed. He hugged me to comfort me, and one moment led to another. We kissed, and you didn't think to stop there? To come home and tell me what had happened. I did. Tears flowed down her face again. I swear I did. I came home that night determined to confess, to fix things between us. But when I arrived, you were sleeping on the couch with your laptop still open. You'd worked late again. And I thought he won't even notice something's different. So I kept the guilt inside, promised myself it would never happen again. But it happened again, many times, from what I saw in the messages. Yes, her voice was almost a whisper. Because after that first time, there was a connection I couldn't break. Even when I tried to distance myself, I ended up going back. He represented a version of me I'd forgotten existed. Someone desirable, interesting, alive. With you, I felt invisible. I was here the whole time. My voice rose involuntarily. Sleeping beside you every night, waking up with you every morning. How can you say you were invisible when I was literally present? Physical presence isn't the same as emotional presence, Daniel. Emily finally looked me directly in the eyes. When was the last time you really saw me? Not just looked in my direction, but truly saw who I am, what I'm feeling. The accusation hurt because there was truth in it. I had become complacent, assuming the love we built was still flourishing while we were just maintaining its routine. But that still didn't justify months of deliberate deception. We decided to attend counseling, though I wasn't sure if it was hope or simply the inability to immediately destroy something that had once meant everything. The therapy sessions dug deep into the silence and distance that had grown between us. Our therapist helped us identify patterns, my tendency to prioritize work and assume everything at home was fine, Emily's inability to voice discontent until it manifested destructively. Emily admitted she hadn't been brave enough to talk to me about her feelings before seeking solace elsewhere. She acknowledged the affair was her escape from loneliness and dissatisfaction she'd been feeling but hadn't known how to express. I realized how crucial honest communication truly is and how dangerous the silence of unmet needs can be. I saw how I'd taken our relationship for granted, assuming that because we'd been happy once, we'd always be happy without continued effort. But understanding the how and why didn't erase the what. Despite our willingness to work through the damage, the scars left by her double life ran deep, creating cracks in the foundation that felt almost impossible to repair. Trust, once shattered so completely, leaves behind shards that cut no matter how carefully you try to walk. For 3 months, we tried. We went on date nights designed to rekindle connection. We practiced communication exercises. Emily cut off all contact with Marcus, even changing departments to avoid interaction. She offered full access to her phone, to all her accounts, to prove she had nothing more to hide. But transparency forced upon a relationship after betrayal isn't the same as natural trust that once existed. Every time her phone buzzed, I felt my stomach clench. Every time she mentioned working late, doubt crept in. The spontaneous ease we'd once shared was replaced by careful choreography, both of us constantly aware of the invisible damage between us. I found myself unable to forgive, not because I didn't want to, but because the betrayal had fundamentally changed how I saw Emily in our entire relationship. When I looked at her, I no longer saw just the woman I'd loved. I saw the person who had lied to my face for months. The mental images of those text messages haunted me, replaying at the worst moments. Eventually, we both had to acknowledge the painful truth. Some things, once broken, can't be put back together no matter how much we wish they could. The weight of betrayal and lost trust became too much to carry forward into any kind of healthy future together. 3 months after that terrible Tuesday in March, Emily moved out of our home. We signed divorce papers with exhausted sadness, mourning not just the end of our marriage, but the death of who we'd thought we were to each other. There was no dramatic final fight, no explosive conclusion, just the quiet recognition that we'd become strangers living in the aftermath of choices that couldn't be undone. This experience revealed to me a harsh truth about modern relationships. Technology, despite its promise to connect us, can also enable the greatest deceptions. In a world where so much of our lives exists in texts, emails, and social media, the potential for hidden secrets grows exponentially. What those text messages revealed became a painful chapter etched into my memory, a stark reminder of how fragile trust can be in this digital age. Trust, once broken, spreads shadows not only in our hearts, but across the devices that mediate our modern lives. Every notification becomes a potential threat, every locked screen a possible secret. The casual intimacy of sharing our days through messages can coexist with profound betrayals hidden in archived chats and deleted conversations. Now, several years later and in a new relationship, I've learned that honesty isn't just a goal. It's a daily practice and fundamental necessity. There are no locked phones between us, no hidden messages, no digital secrets. We've built our relationship on a foundation of radical transparency, both of us acutely aware of how fragile trust can be when technology provides endless opportunities opportunities for deception. We communicate openly and honestly, addressing small dissatisfactions before they grow into resentments, speaking our needs clearly instead of hoping the other person will somehow intuit them. We check in regularly about the state of our relationship, asking the difficult questions about happiness and fulfillment that Emily and I had stopped asking years before everything fell apart. The lesson I learned is clear and profound. In an era of constant digital connection, the truth is often just a message away. What hides behind the silent glow of a phone screen can either bond us or shatter us. And sometimes, the person you thought you knew best may be living a secret life right beside you, concealed in text bubbles you never saw. My failed marriage taught me that love isn't enough without trust, and trust isn't possible without honesty. It taught me that emotional neglect can be as damaging as emotional betrayal, that taking a relationship for granted inevitably leads to taking each other for granted. It showed me that the hardest conversations, the ones about unhappiness, unmet needs, and growing distance, are also the most necessary. In the end, those text messages didn't destroy my marriage. They only revealed that it had already been destroyed from the inside. One lie at a time, one secret conversation at a time, one choice to prioritize someone else over the person who deserved loyalty. The technology just made the betrayal visible, forcing me to see what I'd perhaps been avoiding for too long. And while the discovery was devastating, it was also, in a strange way, a gift, because it freed me from a relationship built on deception and gave me the chance to build something new, something honest, transparent, and real, something where the glow of a phone screen illuminates truth rather than conceals it, where messages bring us closer rather than push us apart.